Hello and welcome to Dare to Know, interviews with quality and reliability thought leaders. I'm Tim Rogers, and today I'm pleased to welcome Bob Latino. Robert Latino is the CEO of Reliability Center, which is a 46-year-old reliability consulting firm specializing in improving equipment, process, and human reliability. Bob is an internationally recognized author, trainer, software developer, and practitioner of best practices in the field of reliability engineering with a specialty in root cause analysis. He's facilitated RCA and FMEA analyses with his clients around the world for over 33 years, and he's taught more than 10,000 students in the PROACT methodology. Bob is the author or co-author of 5 books related to reliability, FMEA, human error reduction, and RCA. The 5th edition of Root Cause Analysis, Improving Performance for Bottom Line Results is now available from CRC Press. Bob Latino, it's a great honor. Welcome and thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Tim. Thanks for having me. It's quite an honor to be here. Appreciate it.
Bob, you've written a lot on LinkedIn, a lot of your articles. Again, we'll provide a link to some of those articles to our listeners in the show notes. But in one of your LinkedIn articles from 2017, you say that we shouldn't assume there's a direct correlation between safety and reliability. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, and I want to full disclosure here. I'm not going to pose myself as a safety expert, but what hooked me into that topic was a book I was reading by Dr. Nancy Levison. It was entitled "The Engineering a Safer World," and it's I guess some have referred to it as the Safety Bible. And I'm going to quote right from it because this is what caught my attention. Assumption 1, she states, safety is increased by increasing system or component reliability. If components or systems do not fail, then accidents will not occur. This assumption is one of the most pervasive in engineering and other fields. The problem is, it's not true. Safety is a system property, not a component property, and must be controlled at the system level, not the component level. And she goes on to say the new assumption is high reliability is neither necessary nor sufficient for safety. So that's what really caught my attention, is because in the reliability world, and that's coming out of the safety world, but I play around in both worlds. But in reliability world, that's not an assumption many would agree with.
I agree with you. I agree with you. Yeah.
So it was interesting because after I wrote a paper after this, the one that you're referring to, and I presented it at one of the SMRP symposiums. And that's the groups that I'm more comfortable with, and they almost booed me out of the room by saying, "Yeah, where are you getting this kind of stuff?" And how could anybody say that? What kind of credibility could you have? And I'm thinking, in the safety world, this is these are really high level researchers, extremely intelligent people. So what would make them think differently? So what
do you think is going on here, Bob? I mean, why are people getting so confused about this?
I think it's getting the difference between personal process and personal safety, because obviously through Ron Moore's work and Ramesh Gulati's work, that they have a lot of data that will support a correlation between, and again, not causation, but a correlation between higher reliability process and the improved safety. Whereas, that doesn't mean that people can't get hurt in non-process areas, where there wasn't a process incident that caused the injury. But certainly when you have steady state operations, there's enough data out there in the public domain that would support the fact that improves safety as a byproduct of that. So, from their standpoint, I can't say, I'm not in their position, but if you're separating the two, I can see where people don't get hurt. I mean, get hurt from non-process areas, and that would affect your safety rate. But I think that most injuries that would occur would come from the operational side. And if you were a higher reliability organization, our data shows that you are safer.
So you think they're suggesting that there is possible the system could be reliable, and yet inherently unsafe? Is that possible?
Well, that's certainly what you take away from the contrasting the assumption one of saying that what we believe is not true, and the new assumption that high reliability is neither necessary nor sufficient for safety. They're saying that there is no correlation,
Right.
and I just the data that's out there in the public domain, I just don't understand how people of that caliber and that pedigree would disagree with it. But there's got to be something that I'm not seeing.
It's kind of a dangerous conclusion, it seems to me.
It is. I mean, from and we look through it through a reliability prism, and it seems dangerous to us because you get this false sense of security, and you say, well, drop your guard because it doesn't matter. And
Right.
I'm not of that mind.
Bob, there's also been a debate within our community about what some people call zero metrics. Some people talk about zero harm. Can you help our listeners understand the controversy here? Why are some people resisting this idea of zero metrics?
Well, this is going to come from the same group in the safety world, and I call them it's the progressive safety organizations, and the lead advocates, and it's mainly quite well known, well respected researchers and academics, and I deal in the healthcare space as well, and I know in the healthcare space, especially the Joint Commission, which doles out the Medicare and Medicaid monies to all the hospitals in the U.S. Their primary marketing campaign is about zero harm and the strive for zero harm. The progressive safety organizations have an issue with that, and I can't say that I fully disagree with it. Is that once you set they're going to say that when you set zero, that it's unrealistic and it's unattainable. So
Right.
therefore, people don't strive to meet metrics that are unattainable. And then they're going to say, from a zero standpoint, that it's I'm trying to think of that it's that it becomes manipulated. That once you set a zero number, that then you can appease the powers that be that made that goal, and then that will cause underreporting.
Interesting.
And I agree with that because when you start to, it's just a number, and then you start putting performance incentives around making that number,
Right.
then people will do what they have to do to make that number. And obviously, reporting more into that type of safety system would detract from the number, so people would just not report.
Got it.
Now, I'm of the mind that there's a middle ground with that because say if you're not shooting for zero, I'm of the mind that you can aspire to zero, not commit to zero.
Yeah.
And that the reason I say that is I use this in the presentations to say, if I have two hospitals in the same community and one of them's marketing campaign is based around zero harm and the other one is towards a tolerance level of we're only going to harm, or kill 5 people a year, which hospital am I going to? so that when you put a tolerance on there, that's saying that I'm shooting for mediocrity.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I know that I'll never get to zero, but that doesn't mean that we can't desire or strive to get to zero. And I just don't understand why that's a bad thing.
Bob, this reminds me of the Six Sigma movement. I mean, for most organizations, Six Sigma is a crazy, goal. It's never going to be achievable, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't work in that direction.
Yeah. And you can't negate the fact that when people do put certain metrics out there, that they can all be manipulated, and I take that to heart, and that's why I'm saying you shouldn't tie performance measurements or incentives to those types of things, because then people are going to get paid more for manipulating a number.
Yeah, I agree. Show me how I measured, and that's how I'll behave.
There you go.
Bob, I want to shift gears on you a little bit and talk about some of your recent writing about root cause analysis. You published a paper not too long ago asking the question, do learning teams make RCA obsolete? How did you end up answering that question?
Well, the origin of this also comes from this progressive safety movement, and it's primarily led by two very well-respected researchers um, and academics, Dr. Sidney Dekker and Dr. Todd Conklin. And before I started going to these human performance conferences, I had never heard of the term learning teams.
Mm.
And when I was at this one particular conference, Dr. Dekker and Dr. Conklin had stated outright that learning teams made RCA obsolete, and that they also referred to RCA as old school.
Wow.
And I said, well, that's shocking, considering that 1/3 of the audience was in the root cause business. So, it makes you wonder when you have such respected people. So, what am I missing here that such intellectual people would make a statement of that despite the public domain information to the contrary? Learning teams. I'm not a learning team person, and I tell you, the of the people that I have talked to that are in the learning team business, I can't find a lot of continuity between how they apply it. But I know it's more in a brainstorming type of environment where they don't focus on the failure, but they focus on on how the day started, and they're looking from a system standpoint about things that prevent people from executing their jobs in an acceptable manner.
Right.
And it could be accomplished in a couple of days. Well, I've been in the RCA business a long time. I know the realities of conducting RCAs, and a lot of it, most of it, is based on evidence.
Sure.
And that's what takes the most time in an RCA, in a legitimate RCA, and an effective RCA, is actually going out there and collecting evidence to back up what you say, and then driving past the decision maker and understanding the reasoning of why someone in the position they were in on that day felt it was the right thing to do. So if you delve deeper into that understanding, you're going to uncover all these organizational system problems that contributed to their thought process, to their reasoning process. So and I don't disagree with the concept of a learning team. I don't think that it's new. I think that any old salt or veteran in the RCA business knows that it's a shallow cause analysis if you're stopping at the physics of the failure and replacing parts. If you're not delving into the human and the systems aspects, then you're not doing an RCA in our world, or at least in my world.
I can't say that I fully understand the concept of learning teams, but I guess I don't understand why these two things would be mutually exclusive. I mean, shouldn't learning teams be using RCA?
Well, as best I can tell, is because the way that we do this in our proprietary in the PROACT methodology that we use is that I've always thought of the exploration into human reasoning as a learning team exercise for our aspect. So we've always seen it as a part of an effective RCA.
Exactly.
And not separating it out.
Exactly.
Now, one thing that I can see where they're coming from is that, I will, from their standpoint, if you're outside of our world and you're looking in, and because I will give it up that probably 80% of the time that I'm called in to help with RCA efforts, I even will call them shallow cause analysis, because they are the equivalent of the 5 whys. And they're not evidence based. They're not really team based. They give the perception that root cause is linear,
right,
and that it has one cause, and those are all things that are not true.
Right.
So when people from the outside, want to characterize all RCA as being that, you can see the basis of where they're getting it from.
Mm. Yeah.
But for the people who do this for a living, that's the farthest thing from the truth. Is that RCA is not linear. RCA is not one root cause, and it's evidence based.
Well, just because the tool isn't being used properly, that's not a good reason to criticize the tool.
Right. And that's true. That's true of RCM. It's TPM. When you take whatever acronym you want. It's just like if your tools at home. If you got some really specialized tools, but if your craftsman is just getting into the business and has no idea how to use them, you're not going to make any masterpiece.
Exactly. So the problem isn't root cause analysis per se; it's how RCA is being applied.
Well, I think this gets back to the safety perspective because I think that the safety people to think about an RCA from the standpoint of when you have a process safety incident and somebody gets hurt in it. The top part of that investigation is going to involve understanding the physics of what went wrong.
Sure.
And then as you drill deeper, you're going to find a decision maker. And then beneath that, you're going to find all the systems stuff.
Right.
Well, up at the physics, the top half of that, the physics part of it is dealing all with the physical sciences. And beneath the decision is all going to be dealing with the social sciences.
Good point.
So that's where the two worlds come together. And, granted, engineers are about as left brain as you're going to get, and they thrive in the physics of the failure.
Right.
And the social scientists are very right brained in that context, and they don't want to deal. They wouldn't know how to deal with the physics, and they don't. And these, what I'm learning from, as far as I can do with the research that I've had, is that these learning teams don't deal with the physics. That when there is something that has a physical aspect to it, that is punted to another group that will do an RCA.
Interesting. It just kind of reminds me of yet another article that you wrote about systems thinking and root cause analysis. I mean, we're really talking about a system here. There is both physics and human behavior, that's required to make these systems work. We can't neglect either one, can we?
No, and when you have to break, root cause is all about breaking down a system. I mean, you have an incident that occurs, and you can't negate the facts of what you found at the scene, but then you have to explain everything. And as you go down through the physics of, how can a bearing fail? And you have erosion, corrosion, fatigue, and overload, and thermal fatigue, mechanical fatigue, whatever you drill down to, you're going to end up with something that caused the physics, that triggered the physics to occur.
Sure.
And then you're going to get to the human who's going to say, well, this person didn't align properly, and I can go ahead and just blame them.
Right.
Well, a progressive organization that's not going to be the end. That's going to be the beginning, because why did we have a person who was not qualified in that position able to do the position?
Right.
So, and then, did they not have the proper tools? Did we not educate them, or did somebody retire and we just threw them in there? Where was the management oversight that would have known that I had a person in that position who wasn't qualified to do it? So that's when you're talking about getting into the social systems, and you're getting into the organizational side, because all of those things contribute to why good people made bad decisions on that day.
That's a real good point. As reliability engineers, quality engineers, we tend to focus a lot on the mechanical engineering, the electrical engineering side of reliability. Right. But I think often we neglect the people side of reliability.
And I'll give it to the human performance improvement community, because I've been attending a lot of their conferences and learning more about learning teams. And we will advocate, at least on our own now, is that a well-rounded RCA team would have a human performance improvement expert on it who knew the social science side, because I've seen their investigative questioning when they get into the understanding of reasoning, and there's a lot that we can learn from that, because we don't explore enough the social science side.
Bob, we've been talking quite a bit about this progressive safety movement. Do you have anything else to add about the movement? Any comment on how these folks view the world of reliability differently than the rest of us do?
Well, a lot of it's going to go back into what we've talked about earlier and saying, do they? I believe that they have mischaracterized RCA. I think that they have mischaracterized reliability, and I don't understand why, given all the public domain information to the contrary. But certainly, these two communities should be, to me, they're interdependent on each other's success.
No question.
I don't think that you can be successful with one without the other.
No question. We absolutely have to work together. A reliability failure that leads to a safety incident is what we're all trying to avoid.
Yeah, and acting, one doesn't replace the other. They shouldn't be silos, and there shouldn't be a us or a them type of contentiousness, which in some circles I'm seeing that. But there should be there's a medium in the middle, and people have to be willing to go shoot for that, as opposed to and oftentimes if you got to look at the business aspects of this, and there's commercialization side of this.
Right.
Is that it's not in my commercial interest to work together by saying that they're complementary. From my standpoint, it's in my business interest to work with the safety side, because I think that we've already incorporated that into our methodology. But all I'm learning is that we could do that aspect of our business much better with their help.
That's well said. We have to continue to talk. We got to continue to talk together and work together. There's no question about that. Bob, this has been great. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Oh, well, thanks for your time, and I appreciate the invite.
That was Bob Latino, CEO of the Reliability Center. To learn more about the training programs at the Reliability Center, you should visit their website, which is www.reliability.com. We'll post the links to some of Bob's articles on LinkedIn on the show notes for this recording. This is Tim Rogers. Thanks again for joining us.